What is your reaction to hearing that the 2009 champion and 102-time race winner will be back in the Xfinity Series in 2023?
As much as I want to say I'm surprised, I'm really not that surprised. Kyle Busch has established himself as that kind of personality that's just, I'm back, deal with it. I'm here again. And so here he comes yet again, back to the Xfinity Series. Kyle Busch, he's going to be with Kaulig Racing after Voyager left, as you said, and he's going to be going to first his hometown track of Las Vegas Motor Speedway, and then he'll pick up at Phoenix, Charlotte, Watkins Glen, and Darlington. And NASCAR.com telling us that the sponsorship is going to be announced later, and it's going to be curious as well to see who's going to be sponsoring Kyle Busch with Kaulig Racing. I mean, there's some you could pick out of the hat there from Kaulig already, or maybe somebody from his Cup sponsorships will step down there with him for those endeavors, or possibly just a Rowdy Energy car. That seems pretty plausible as well. But man, Kyle Busch coming back to the Xfinity Series, it's really not uncharacteristic of him, although it came as a surprise. And I remember talking to you, Ben, before maybe just a few days ago, whenever this news first broke. What really is the nature of this decision for Kyle Busch? Is it business? Is it just pure pleasure? Is it just because he likes to win and this is where he can do that? Or is it because he likes the group of guys at Kaulig? He likes what they've been putting together in such a short time, and all those probably play a part in that. I'd say business is probably the biggest piece of the puzzle. But I'll be honest with you. Now that he has moved away from Toyota, going to a Chevrolet Camaro, it just feels different. And I'm sure once we get into the season, we're going to see he's the same old Kyle, but it just feels like a different journey into the Xfinity Series. And I'll be honest with you, I'm not as disappointed. Like I'm actually kind of okay with it for a little bit, but I know I'll come to my senses here soon. Don't you worry.
Well, our colleague Josh Birch couldn't be on the show tonight. He's been busy with car launches over on the Formula One side of things all day on his YouTube channel. But he did pass along this quote to me, and he's going to be on the show next week, hopefully. So maybe Justin Haley will win the race in that car, and then he'll really be fired up. But he did pass along this quote to me. He says, "I think it's unfair for Kyle to take the seat away from any upcoming talent when he's had such a long and successful career at the top of the pyramid in NASCAR. For him to come out for 3 races, which is really going to be 5, right, is like allowing for a former CEO to run the show for a day when there's been so many changes. He's had his time. He should allow the younger generation to shine." And I think that's kind of always been the argument against having Cup drivers in Xfinity and trucks. Brandon, I got to say, me, I'm all about consistency. It doesn't really feel any different to me. Kyle is still who he is, a multiple-time, 2-time Cup champion, with whatever it is now, 60 some odd Cup Series race wins, I believe. No doubt a surefire first ballot Hall of Famer, somebody who is, approaching all-time great top 10 level status in this sport, and to see him return to the Xfinity Series, I've got to say, I'm not surprised either, especially with this trend I think he was kind of making light of in his announcement video of athletes unretiring these days. I know this wasn't, retirement in that sense. It was just stepping away from doing these 5 Xfinity races a year. But I don't know. I mean, I try to stay consistent. I think a lot of fans, I think there has been a shift, because I remember, growing up in the days where, you could have 20 to 25 Cup drivers in a Busch Series race at a time. And that's not an exaggeration. I still remember the first Busch race I ever watched was 2007 Las Vegas. There were 26 Cup regulars in the field that day. So it's far, far better than it was 15, 16 years ago. But at the same time, it's the principle of the thing that still bothers me. And, we've had this discussion before. You don't see this in other forms of racing. The only other sport I can think of off the top of my head is baseball, when a guy, is coming off an injury and trying to rehab a little bit. We saw it. If you want to talk about my Philadelphia Phillies, Bryce Harper did it coming off of his injury this year. And after 2 games and a couple of home runs, I think it was pretty evident that he was ready to come back. But I don't know. It just seems to me like there's been a shift here. And I don't know if it's just because we don't see it nearly as often these days, but I used to feel like it was very difficult to find fans that were okay with this. Now I feel like it's really, if it's not a 50-50 split, it might even be there are more fans on the side of we should be welcoming Cup drivers into the lower divisions. It gives the young guns an opportunity to measure themselves against the best of the best that race on Sundays. And as much as I, am firmly on the side that I'm on, I do understand the arguments on both sides here, and I understand the opposition to it. I get that, the Xfinity drivers a lot of times say they love having the opportunity to race against Kyle Busch and see how they stack up. But again, it's not just a Kyle Busch issue for me. Chase Elliott's running a truck race at Daytona this weekend for Bill McAnally because, one of their drivers isn't 18 yet. I would, like Josh was saying, much rather see, put Derek Kraus back in the car. Derek helped build your entire truck program. I know he had a off season last year by the standards of first couple of years of that program, but why not put him back in the truck? And I understand that he's got a ride of his own this weekend, but it doesn't sound like he's got very much guaranteed beyond that this year. But there are plenty of other drivers in Chevrolet's pipeline, I'm sure, that would love the opportunity to race at Daytona. So why does it need? I understand the Cup driver brings sponsorship a lot of times from a business standpoint, but I just think in a perfect world, we'd see that opportunity go to another young development driver. And that's where the frustration lies for me. And of course, they're the best of the best that race on Sundays. So from a performance standpoint as well, I mean, the last time Kyle was in the Xfinity Series, he went 5 for 5 on wins. So you almost, with not 100% certainty, but you can watch the race and feel pretty good about knowing ahead of time who's, if not going to win the race, be in the top 3 or top 5, or at least in contention for it.
Yeah, I completely hear you, that argument. And I completely agree with you from everything you just said there. But at the same time, I think I've already got out of those stages of grief already from how long he's been dealing with the Xfinity Series and coming back now. And I think I'm more just glad that it's only going to be 5 races and it's not anything more.
Yeah, and listen, I will take this compromise. I think that it's probably this is where we're going to be set for a while. I don't see it going away entirely. I know my editor-in-chief over at LastCard.info, Brock Beard, wrote that op-ed that got, again, a lot of mixed reaction. People were fired up in the positive sense, and they were certainly fired up in the negative sense as well. Brock's saying it's time to put the hammer down and ban them outright. And again, I wouldn't be opposed to that, but I know a lot of people would. And let me be clear, of course, I'm not, part of the marketing team or on the business side of, who writes the checks here for any of these race teams. So I get it. Sometimes it's inevitable. I guess we should be mad at Voyager for being part of the crypto boom that seems to, or crypto bubble, I guess I should say, that looked like it was booming and now is coming crashing down. I'm hardly a crypto expert, so I won't go too deep into that. But obviously it's, starting to affect drivers like Landon Castle. Of course, Brandon Brown had that whole deal with the LGB coin or whatever last off season. So, it's a difficult
the .com bubble
circumstance,
did the same thing too, by the way.
Yeah, that's true.